Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Vincent Vision. Halloween Horror Nights edition. Something I love doing every HHN season is prepare by watching all of the different movies and TV shows and sometimes even video games that are related to all of the haunted houses and scare zones that are announced each year. So in this video, I thought it'd be super fun to come up with a watch list for this year's Halloween Horror Nights 2023. The movies, TV shows, and video games you should know about going into this year's event. And this is not just gonna be movies and TV shows, these are gonna be YouTube videos, these are gonna be podcasts, these are gonna be video games. All different forms of media, things to get you in the proper mindset for this year's Halloween Horror Nights season. So I want to give you guys some homework and give you a list of things to watch and things to listen to become more familiar with the event this year so that when you go in, whenever you go, you know everything there is to know about it. You're going to enjoy the haunted houses that much more because of it. So let's get started. Let's talk about the really easy ones, the IPs. The first one, we'll talk about it. Most popular house this year, I bet, is going to be Stranger Things. Stranger Things comes back to Universal Orlando for the third time, and this year's haunted house is going to be based off of season 4 of Stranger Things. So, needless to say, I would recommend that you watch season 4 of Stranger Things in order to enjoy this haunted house a lot more. Based off of previous Stranger Things houses that we've had, you are put right in the middle of some of the most iconic and memorable scenes from the show. So I'm expecting you to have that same experience going through this haunted house. You're gonna see Vecna, you're probably gonna see Eddie Munson playing the guitar on top of the trailer, you're gonna see Max with the song Running Up the Hills, floating up in the sky. If you can think of a major scene from season 4 of Stranger Things, it's more than likely going to be in this haunted house. So definitely watch that show. If you haven't already, you'll enjoy the haunted house a lot more. The second is The Exorcist Believer. Now, this haunted house is based off the Blumhouse movie, Exorcist Believer, which has not yet come out. It's gonna come out October 13th, 2023, almost halfway into the Orlando event, which starts September 1st. So right now, regarding that, all you got is the trailer to watch. But something you should definitely watch in relation to this haunted house is the original Exorcist film. Exorcist Believer is a sequel of sorts to the original 1973 film. Characters from the first film are returning for the movie, and while you might be going through the haunted house and may not know exactly everything that's going on because the movie hasn't come out yet, I am sure that if you watch the original Exorcist, you will have a better understanding of what could be happening. I still haven't seen it yet because it's a little too scary for me, or at least I've always been told it's very scary. But I will. I'll watch it. I'll watch it if you watch it. The next one is The Last of Us, which is a pretty interesting IP. This is one I'm very excited for personally, and I'm actually really excited for this one because it's based off the PlayStation game versus the very popular HBO show. But the good thing is, for those who aren't exactly going to be buying a PlayStation 5 to play The Last of Us Part 1, the HBO show and the video game are very, very identical in aesthetics, in setting. They've actually, I would say they've done an amazing job with replicating the setting from the video game in the show. So I personally think if you don't want to play the game, you can watch the show and you'll have a great time. What Last of Us is known for is that green, overgrown city aesthetic, which is in a lot of the game. And in particular in the show, I would say watch the first couple episodes, maybe go all the way up to episode 5. Those first 5 episodes are what I'm imagining the aesthetic of the Last of Us haunted house is going to be like. Unless, of course, they include the hospital, which if you've watched Last of Us or you've played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I hope the hospital is in there. It is, let's just say, very, very important to the Last of Us story. Then there is Chucky Ultimate Kill List, which I'm kind of a little confused about because whenever they originally announced it back in the end of last year's Halloween Horror Nights, they very much heavily implied that this was going to be based off the sci-fi show Chucky. Now it seems like they're kind of doing away with that, and this is just like full-on Chucky. So maybe watch the sci-fi show. I would say watch the first 2 episodes. I haven't seen it yet personally. What I would really recommend over that is watch the first 2 Child's Play movies. Assuming this haunted house is going to be straight Chucky, You're not gonna get any Bride of Chucky or anything like that. If you're just getting Chucky coming at you with a knife and killing people in outrageous ways, I think the first 2 movies, Child's Play 1 and 2, that'll cover enough Chucky ground and you kind of get the vibe. Especially the second movie leans into more outrageous Chucky kills versus the original Child's Play, which is actually pretty great. And the next of the IP houses is Universal Monsters Unmasked. You will be seeing monsters like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Phantom of the Opera, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the Invisible Man. These are classic horror movies, and even if you've never seen Dracula or Wolfman or Frankenstein, you understand what these monsters are. And I think the same could be said for these particular monsters as well. What I've found with these Universal Monster haunted houses is that they've done a really great job at modernizing these creatures and making them scary for modern audiences, but have still been able to include references and callbacks to those fans of the classic horror films. I would recommend you watch the 1933 Invisible Man with Claude Rains. Claude Rains is the Invisible Man, you know, a Rocky Horror Picture Show. The 1923 Hunchback of Notre Dame with Lon Chaney, the legendary Lon Chaney, the man of 1,000 faces. If you've ever been to the horror makeup show and you've seen the statue of the Phantom of the Opera, that's him. Of course, the original Phantom of the Opera as well. The old Phantom of the Opera, okay? The 1925 version. Not the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical, okay? No. Not a thing. But, I mean, if you want to watch it, that's fine too. Now, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde has a Universal film, but it is like from like the 1910s, and it is really old, and it is a really hard watch. So I would actually recommend something a little bit more modern. Warner Brothers in the 1930s did a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movie, and a lot of people widely recognize that to be the best on-screen version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Even though I don't think it's going to be like that, I think it's going to be more like the big scary Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That's the one to watch. These are the classic horror movies, the black and white horror films that maybe you kind of just like leave on in the background as you're cooking dinner or doing something else. These are definitely really spooky, classic horror, Halloween vibes. These are old movies, so they are a little bit of a slower burn, okay? And the monster isn't always in these movies all of the time. Usually they have very little screen time, but definitely recommended watching just to get you into the Universal Monsters mood. Now we're starting to head into our original haunted houses, and a lot of these recommendations are not going to be direct movies related to these for obvious reasons, but more of a mix of YouTube media, documentaries about real people and real things, podcasts, and some movies that just like match the vibe. The first one of the most interesting in my opinion out of all of the original haunted houses, is The Darkest Deal. And in this haunted house, we are following a musician who goes by the name of Pine Straw Struce, who sold his soul to a mysterious figure known as the Collector, who gave him the ability to play blues music like an expert. Of course, whenever you sell your soul to the devil, there's usually bad news involved. So I'm expecting this haunted house to deal with that in a more obvious way, but a lot of people in the Horror Nights community have connected the dots and have found that the story of Mr. Pine Straw Struce is very similar to a real musician from many years ago by the name of Robert Johnson. Now, Robert Johnson was a blues player in the early 1920s and 30s. It was really bad, really awful, and all of a sudden, overnight, he became an expert, amazing, influential blues legend. And a lot of people think that Mr. Johnson made a deal with the devil in Mississippi at the crossroads of Highway 61 and 49, which in fact is a real place, and you can actually visit the crossroads and see a monument dedicated to Robert Johnson. There is a relatively newer documentary on Netflix called Remastered, Devil at the Crossroads, that talks about Robert Johnson specifically and this alleged deal with the devil that he made. And there's also a 1986 movie that goes by the name of Crossroads, which is a more fictitious take of the Robert Johnson story, where a young musician has to play guitar against the devil. The next one is Bloodmoon, Dark Offerings. This is a haunted house that takes place during the colonial eras. All we know about it right now is a cult in a village is turning on people and they're killing them. So there's not too much to go off of. to draw any sort of obvious inspirations from movies and so on. But there is a movie, very similar vibes to the description of this haunted house, and it is The Witch from 2015. This is an A24 horror film. It features witchcraft and pilgrims, and I think all of the vibes from that movie can help you sort of visualize or feel out what Bloodmoon Dark Offerings may or may not be like. The next one is a fun one, and this is Dueling Dragons Choose Thy Fate. This is an original haunted house based off of the old Dueling Dragons ride that used to exist in Islands of Adventure. And this ride was known for a couple things. It had 2 really amazing, intense roller coasters that when the park first opened up, they were timed to go at the same time and have near misses. And it had one of the most detailed and, for a lot of people, scariest queues at Islands of Adventure or any theme park. This haunted house, I'm expecting to have a lot of callbacks to the Dueling Dragons ride. So as far as things that I would recommend to watch in order to prepare for this haunted house, I would recommend my friend Sam, Expedition Theme Parks, video on the history of the Dueling Dragons ride. And there's a really great video walkthrough from a gentleman named Coaster Jeff, who has a YouTube video going through the Dueling Dragons queue. Those are the 2 that I would definitely recommend watching to prepare you for Dueling Dragons. Down below in the comments, let me know which dragon you'd prefer, whether it be the fire dragon or the ice dragon. I think me personally, I'm more of like a fire dragon person. And last but certainly not least is our icon of this year's event, Dr. Oddfellow. He is going to have his own haunted house called Dr. Oddfellow Twisted Origins. He is going to have his own scare zone called Dr. Oddfellow's Collection of Horror. And based off of the Discover Universal podcast, the official Universal podcast, Dr. Oddfellow as a character is going to have a connection to all of the different scare zones that we will be able to go through this year. So I would definitely recommended listening for Dr. Oddfellow is all of the Discover Universal podcasts related to Halloween Horror Nights this year. There is a 25-minute one that goes into the backstory of Dr. Oddfellow. We are getting podcasts with short stories related to the scare zones. The podcast for Vamp 69 Summer of Blood is out, and I think this is going to be your best way to get the extended backstory to Dr. Oddfellow. And as far as recommendations go, I think right now that is all I've got. Based off of everything we know so far, these are the movies, video games, TV shows, podcasts, YouTube videos, all that stuff. You get a whole month worth of content available to you to prepare you for this year's Halloween Horror Nights, which I think is going to be pretty fantastic. This video is going to be a really great opportunity to help your fellow Horror Nights fans prepare for the event by leaving a comment down below and recommending other types of movies and TV shows and whatever to get you into the Horror Nights mood this year. I gotta get some popcorn ready because I have got a lot of movies and TV shows to watch. So thank you guys for watching another Vincent Vision, and I will see you in the fog. I thought the chair would go a little lower.